Skyfall is the third Daniel Craig James Bond movie, and I'm very excited to give you guys my review for this movie. Be sure to check out my playlist with my previous James Bond movie reviews. As well, be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Now let's get into this review. In this movie, James Bond's loyalty to M is tested when her past comes back to haunt her. When MI6 is under attack, 007 must track down and destroy the threat, no matter how personal the cost. So if you've been watching my previous videos, you know that Casino Royale was the first James Bond movie I ever saw. Well, Skyfall was the first one I saw in theaters, and I can still remember seeing it in theaters, and I can remember the hype I was feeling building up to that movie. I remember for my birthday that year, I got a gift card for HMV, a movie store that no longer exists, at least in Canada. I'm actually still pretty sad about that, but got that gift card. I went to get some James Bond movies because Skyfall was coming, and made my mom wanted to check out some of the older films I had seen, Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace at that point, and Dr. No. Maybe The World is not enough, but definitely the other three I had seen at this point. Went to the HMV, got the first three Sean Connery films, On Her Majesty's Secret Service and The Spy Who Loved Me, and doing that built my hype for Skyfall. And after watching Skyfall, I felt like I really became a fan of the James Bond franchise, and after that I went and tracked down all the movies and watched them. And Skyfall, for me, I would say at this point, is my favorite Bond film. I know a lot of people say Casino Royale or Goldfinger, but for me, it's Skyfall. I love this movie. As I said, I can still remember watching it in theaters. I just rewatched it this evening again with my mom, and I could remember how I felt watching it in theaters, and I just thought this movie was absolutely terrific. The action in this movie is fantastic. It was filmed well. A big step up from Quantum of Solace. It took away the shaky cam and the quick editing. I thought the action was great. It opened very strong with its opening sequence with a chase and fight on a train. It was great. I loved it. I think all the action in this was great throughout. And it's a movie that doesn't have too much action in it compared to some of the other Bond films. Like there's a fair amount in there, but compared to some of the other Bond films, it doesn't have maybe as much action, and I still love this movie, which to me means it's really good. And I think the plot for this movie was great. The villain, played by Javier Bardem, was fantastic. He's one of my favorite in the franchise, and his introduction was great. That scene with Bond tied down to the chair, and he comes down this elevator at the far end of this room, and he gives this monologue just slowly walking up to Bond. I thought it was a fantastic introduction to his character, and he was a really strong character to me because you understand his motivation. He was a former agent, and he was part of M's past, and he's sort of out to seek revenge for stuff that happened. I thought that was great. I thought it worked very well. They have a big plot with him in a way, and there's maybe some nitpicks I have with it, but overall I thought it was a pretty strong plot. And M in this movie is sort of like the Bond woman, which I kind of like. She doesn't have any romantic stuff with Bond himself, but she's sort of like the main female lead in this. I like what they did with M in it, how her past sort of comes to haunt her in this, and Judi Dench does a great job in this movie, and it's the last time she plays M in the Bond franchise, and she was great. And as always, Daniel Craig was great in the role again, and I liked in this movie they acknowledged that he's becoming an older agent. In the previous Bond eras, they never really acknowledged that when the actors were getting older, like Roger Moore. In this one, they acknowledge he's an older guy, and he's also been injured at the start of this movie. He was injured, so that's sort of affecting him as well. But I thought that was great, and this movie also delves into some of Bond's past as well, with his childhood, becoming an orphan, sort of where he was originally raised. I thought that was really cool as well. They've never really delved that deep into Bond's past in the other eras of Bond, so it's nice they're doing something different. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the final act. I know some people have issue with it, but I really liked it. I enjoyed the sort of small scale setting of it taking place in this mansion out in the middle of nowhere. I thought it was cool. It looked really cool to me too. I liked how they set up traps, and I liked that it had more emotional weight than some of the Bond endings have had before. Like maybe Casino Royale had emotional weight to it with its final climax of the movie, but this one had Bond trying to protect M, so that had an extra layer of depth to it for me, and also the setting was sort of personal to Bond, so I thought that worked as well. It's not a Bond film that ends with this villain trying to scheme to take over the world. This was more personal, had, you know, personal threats, if that makes sense, and I really liked that, and I liked how they concluded it. Bond sort of wins but doesn't at the same time. I liked that. I thought it was really good. This movie, in my opinion, is also one of the best looking Bond films. There's some great shots, some great cinematography. I really like the way Sam Mendes directed this movie. There's some great shots, and again, that scene where the villain's introduced, I love how they handled that. Just one shot, villain walking down the room towards Bond giving his monologue. I thought that was fantastic. He did the action very well. Again, a big step up from Quantum of Solace. Got rid of that quick editing, and it was great. And it had some, you know, the classic Bond action. You got car chases, you got the fist fights on top of trains. That was all really good. And this movie also brought back some of the older stuff that we knew in the older era of Bond that hadn't been in the Daniel Craig era. They bring in Q, played by Ben Whishaw. Thought he was fantastic. And they bring in Moneypenny, played by Naomi Harris. Thought she was really good. And they also bring in Ralph Fiennes as the new M, and I really enjoy him as M in this movie and the future ones. So that was good. You get a great moment with the classic Bond car as well from Goldfinger. This movie for me is fantastic. The few issues I have with this movie are just nitpicks. They don't take a lot of enjoyment away from me. Some of them are just like with the villain's overall plan when he's been captured and he escapes. Most of that I can buy. There's just a couple moments where like just slightly too much of a stretch for me to believe he could plan that. One for me is when he has the explosion and the train comes through that explosion to sort of keep Bond away from him so he could get away. That was a cool scene, and it's really cool, and so it doesn't really bother me because of that, but it's still like, well, he planned that very well to have that train there in time. So there's some small moments like that, but for the most part I could buy into it. And then the other small nitpick I had was with the sort of second love interest that was briefly in the movie. And she's sort of helping Bond get to the villain, and for a while she thinks he's dead, and she's on this boat going back to the villain, and he's not dead. He gets there, she's in the shower, and he joins her, and she doesn't know he's there until he's right up behind her, and it's like, okay, kind of creepy. It's a very quick moment. It doesn't bother me as much as the scene in the barn in Goldfinger, but it's still kind of like, okay, I think you're going a bit too far with that. So those are my nitpicks of this movie. I don't have any major issues. As I said, I love this movie. I can still remember seeing it in theaters, and after seeing this movie, it made me feel like I was now a Bond fan. I wanted to watch all the movies, and I now have, and I still love it to this day, and I think right now it is my favorite Bond film. For me, I'm going to give Skyfall a 96%. Absolutely love this movie. If you guys have seen it, be sure to let me know what you thought about it. As well, be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and be sure to stay tuned for some more reviews coming soon. And until my next video, take care everybody.